Thomas and Colleen Campbell seemed like the perfect couple who had everything one could dream of: adorable children, luxurious trips, precious jewelry, and a designer wardrobe. Their life appeared to be a fairy tale, filled with glamour and affluence. However, behind the external glitz, dark secrets were lurking. What could possibly push someone to betrayal and cruelty? What twisted motive compelled a woman to arrange 2 hours of torture and the murder of the one she once vowed to love? In 2008, Thomas Campbell had a stable full-time job. However, that wasn't enough for him. He wanted more. Suddenly, he quit his job, opting for government benefits instead. His wife Colleen, while receiving unemployment assistance, secretly worked part-time at a local clothing store for 16 hours a week. From the outside, their life should have looked modest, but in reality, it was quite the opposite. The couple flaunted a whole array of brand-new luxury cars with personalized plates: an Audi A3, a Mercedes C63, a BMW X5. They acted as if they had nothing to hide. Their vacations were just as extravagant: 10-day trips to Cancun, Mexico, costing over £10,000, lavish travels to Bulgaria and Gran Canaria. The couple's wardrobe told the same story: expensive designer clothes, exquisite jewelry, and refined tastes that in no way matched their declared income. Such a pompous lifestyle continued for almost 5 years, unchecked, uncontrolled, and carefree. But in 2014, this illusion began to dissipate. Greater Manchester Police launched Operation Harness, a large-scale investigation into the Campbells' alleged involvement in cocaine distribution in the Clayton area of Manchester. As the clouds gathered over the couple, Thomas felt he was being watched. He understood that the game was over. In a desperate attempt to divert suspicion, the pumped-up gym-goer suddenly declared himself a freelance fitness instructor. But it was too little, too late. The Manchester Police's Operation Challenger had already unraveled all the threads. Behind the facade of gym workouts and a glamorous social media life, Thomas was part of a much larger network of supply and distribution. And then the raid happened, and all the darkness poured out. The Campbells' home, once a symbol of their unprecedented success, became the final target of a massive operation against drug trafficking in Manchester. In 2019, the law finally caught up with the couple. Thomas Campbell was sentenced to 2 years in prison after pleading guilty to money laundering. Colleen received 16 months behind bars on the same charge. By 2021, both were out, but their once luxurious life was a thing of the past. The cracks that had accumulated over the years in their relationship turned into a chasm when Colleen learned about the most disgraceful betrayal: Thomas had been sleeping with one of her close friends. A scandalous face-to-face argument erupted, filled with rage and humiliation. It marked the end of their relationship. Years of luxury, lies, and trust dissolved in an instant. The couple, who once boasted about their wealth, parted ways. But this was not the end of the story. The darkest part was yet to come. The darkest part of this story was still ahead. In an unexpected turn of events, Colleen Campbell allied herself with an unlikely partner, John Belfield, the ex-boyfriend of the woman Thomas had been cheating with. Both were betrayed, filled with fury, and thirsty for revenge. Upon learning about the affair, Belfield felt the same rage as Colleen. Their mutual hatred for Thomas brought them together, and what began as an exchange on Instagram quickly grew into an ominous alliance. They devised a chilling plan, a carefully orchestrated ambush to take Thomas's money and anything of value. But it wasn't just about the money. It was personal, it was revenge. Colleen, being Thomas's ex-wife, became a key figure in the conspiracy. She provided all the necessary information: his daily schedule, whereabouts, exact times, and places where he could be found. With this data, Belfield began to assemble his team. He involved Stephen Cluworth and Rhys Stephen, each of whom was assigned a special role. Cluworth was given a particularly intrusive task: he was sent to the school of Thomas's daughter. When Thomas was picking up his child, Cluworth discreetly attached a GPS tracker to his van, which ultimately led the perpetrators to the victim's doorstep. The trap was set, the countdown to murder had begun. While the plan to attack Thomas Campbell was gaining momentum, Colleen Campbell was already knee-deep elsewhere. Fueled by anger and a desire to protect her friend, she led a brutal attack on a woman accused of sleeping with her friend's boyfriend. This conflict initially didn't even involve Colleen, but that didn't stop her. Accompanied by 3 accomplices, including 2 other women, Colleen drove up in a car, ready for a fight. Surveillance cameras captured the perpetrators exiting the vehicle, each armed. In Colleen's hands, a hammer was gripped with chilling confidence. What followed was 90 seconds of frenzied violence. The victim was attacked, beaten, and strangled in a vicious group assault. Only the intervention of passers-by, horrified by what they witnessed, forced the attackers to retreat and flee the scene. It was a shocking display of aggression that demonstrated how unpredictable and dangerous Colleen had become. And it was just a prelude to the that was yet to occur. The murder plan was set in motion. After days of surveillance, tracking Thomas's every step and movement, John Belfield's team was ready to strike. They watched him, studied his habits, and waited for the perfect moment. When Thomas opened the door of his own home, unaware of the danger lurking just steps away, the attackers pounced on him. They dragged him inside and subjected him to a horrific 2-hour ordeal of incredible cruelty. They stabbed him, punched him, and brutally stomped on him. Then, stripping him naked, leaving him only in his socks, they flipped him face down and poured boiling water from a kettle onto his exposed skin, particularly his buttocks. It was a savage and degrading act of torture. By the time the attackers fled the crime scene, Thomas Campbell was barely clinging to life. Left to die alone in the hallway of his own home, he ultimately succumbed to a staggering 61 injuries. The next morning, neighbors stumbled upon his lifeless body. The scene that unfolded before their eyes was horrifying. "I'm calling an ambulance. Tell me exactly what happened." "I'm sorry, I'm in shock. There's a man's body lying here. Many children live on this street. I really don't want them to see any of this." Despite playing a key role in the brutal murder of Thomas Campbell, Colleen Campbell took to social media to portray herself as a grieving widow, a chilling deception. She posted heartfelt tributes, in one of which she wrote, "13 years and 2 wonderful children, I'm eternally grateful. I would give anything to hear your infectious laughter or endless grumbling just one more time." She filled her accounts with similar messages, creating an image of a broken heart and loss. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, she was helping to organize Thomas's memorial service and even attended it, standing shoulder to shoulder with his grief-stricken family, feigning sorrow and concealing her guilt. But the truth was relentlessly catching up. Just 2 weeks after the murder, Greater Manchester Police had already tracked down their first suspect, Stephen Cloworth. He was arrested and charged with conspiracy to murder 38-year-old Thomas Campbell. The gang leader, John Belfield, fled the country, and police initially assumed he had gone to the Spanish island of Tenerife. But the manhunt was on a much larger scale. On March 23, 2023, Belfield was found in Suriname, where he was hiding. Local authorities arrested him and began preparing for his extradition. Another key figure, Reece Stephen, also came under investigation. Although he was not present at the actual murder, it was confirmed that at the time of the attack, he was intoxicated at a swingers club. He played an important role in the preparation and planning of the crime. For his involvement, he was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 12 years. Belfield, upon his return to the UK, was arrested at Manchester Airport and charged. Here is the unique version of Section 3 with all the details and plot preserved. Belfield pleaded not guilty and is currently being held in custody awaiting trial, scheduled for June 3, 2025. Law enforcement confirms that one of the suspects in this case is still at large. As for Colleen, she initially managed to slip through the fingers of justice. She sobbed alongside Thomas's family, assured them that she still loved him, embraced them in shared grief, all the while knowing the truth. But then, in a strange and incriminating turn of events, she let something slip. During a conversation with Thomas's mother, Colleen shared chilling details about the murder, details that had not yet been made public. When asked how she knew this, she claimed that Thomas's ghost had appeared to her and that her psychic friend had conveyed this information from his spirit. This statement was the last straw. Thomas's mother immediately went to the police. The game was over. Colleen's mask had finally fallen, and justice was approaching her with 7 league strides. She was arrested and brought to trial on the most serious charge, premeditated murder. However, after lengthy court battles, the jury acquitted Colleen of intentional murder, instead finding her guilty of manslaughter. Despite her attempts to downplay her role, the police investigation revealed the true extent of her involvement in the crime. It became evident that she was the main architect of the plan that led to the brutal death of her ex-husband. Investigators found that Colleen knew full well about the GPS tracker installed on Thomas's van. It was this device that led the killers straight to him. It is also believed that it was she who revealed which of their daughter's schools Thomas usually picked up the child from. Such incriminating information could only be known by someone from the victim's inner circle. The police seized footage from surveillance cameras installed in Colleen's house, which ultimately sealed her fate. The video captured Colleen talking on the phone with John Belfield, discussing the details of the plan. They were also seen during a face-to-face meeting, where they talked about something for over half an hour. The entire attack was meticulously planned. During interrogation, Colleen insisted that she never intended to kill Thomas, claiming that the plan was merely to steal 2 Rolex watches. However, these watches were never found, and her excuses did nothing to diminish the gravity of her complicity in the crime. The court sentenced Colleen to 12 years in prison, ruling that she must serve at least 2/3 of that term behind bars before she can be eligible for parole. Once a mother and wife who enjoyed a life of luxury, she is now forced to atone for years for her betrayal, as cold and calculated as Colleen herself. It happened on January 22, 2023. A worker at a waste processing company, sifting through trash in a dumpster near a park in the Colombian capital of Bogotá, stumbled upon something horrifying. After clearing away some of the refuse, the man suddenly froze, shocked by what he saw at the bottom of the bin. There lay a blue suitcase, wrapped in black tape, surrounded by several trash bags. Inside the suitcase was a woman's body. There was no doubt, as a human head protruded from under the zipper. Frightened by the gruesome find, the worker drove a block away and reported the incident to the authorities. Soon, a group of police officers arrived at the scene to investigate. Law enforcement was shocked by what they saw. A crumpled, lifeless body lay inside the suitcase. Later, the victim was identified as Valentina Tres Palacios. At first glance, her body showed no obvious signs of death, no bullet holes, no stab wounds. The girl was also not dismembered. Upon opening the suitcase, investigators noticed that the victim was wearing pajamas with a belt. This suggested that the killer had attacked her in her sleep. The deceased was identified thanks to items in a black cardboard box on the side of the suitcase. Among the personal belongings, police found the girl's student ID card, as well as a passport she had used when applying for her diploma. There were also other documents and personal effects belonging to Valentina. For the investigative team, the presence of documents was an unexpected find, as they are usually taken in such cases. Upon discovering the body, law enforcement contacted the girl's relatives. They confirmed that on January 20th and 21st, Valentina was with her boyfriend, a U.S. citizen. Autopsy results showed that the victim had suffered numerous blows to the head, had signs of various bodily injuries, hemorrhages on the right side of her tongue, and strangulation marks on her neck. Everything indicated that she had been strangled. Valentina Tres Palacios was born on December 16, 2001 in Bogotá. She was studying at the Faculty of Commerce and International Business. From a young age, she was passionate about music. Thanks to her talent and excellent ear, the girl began working as a DJ in Colombia immediately after receiving her diploma. Over the past 3 years, Valentina had achieved significant career success and made many friends from abroad. She visited different countries, where she gained experience and shared her own developments. During this time, the girl had the opportunity to perform alongside famous artists and celebrities, tour over 20 cities in Colombia, and participate in major international events in her genre. Valentina had experience performing at festivals and toured Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. Those around her predicted a brilliant future for her. The girl was in demand, performing in the best nightclubs in the country, doing what she loved most. Valentina was smiling and cheerful, enjoying the world of parties. She was active on social media, sharing her performances and daily life with followers. Recently, the girl received an award as the best amateur DJ in the field of electronic music in Colombia. In her profiles, Valentina mostly wrote about two things: her rapid success in the field of electronic music in clubs and her romantic relationship with an American named John Paul, whom she met online at the end of 2021. Over time, John and Valentina began to communicate more actively. Despite the girl's initial reluctance to enter into a serious relationship, their interactions gradually turned romantic, and the couple got together. John Paul lived in the USA. He had serious intentions to share his life with Valentina. So much so that he sent her money for cosmetic procedures, lip and cheekbone augmentation with hyaluronic acid, and also advised his beloved to have plastic surgery to insert breast implants. Having changed the girl's appearance over several months, Paul made her the center of attention wherever she appeared. The man regularly sent Valentina money and soon proposed marriage. John dreamed of moving to Colombia to be near her and start a family. However, the girl had doubts, as Paul turned out to be very jealous. He even hired a private detective to monitor Valentina's movements and acquaintances. This greatly alarmed the girl's family, as she shared her concerns about the situation with them. However, in January 2023, John Paul was ready to share his life with his beloved. He firmly decided to marry Valentina and began to process the paperwork. The man rented an apartment in the north of Bogotá, where he planned to spend the weekend with the girl until they found a place for permanent cohabitation. Paul arrived in the Colombian capital on Thursday, January 19. Surveillance cameras recorded him entering the apartment around 11 p.m. The man was carrying a blue travel suitcase, similar to the one in which Valentina's body was later found. When the gruesome discovery became known, suspicion immediately fell on John Paul as the last person to see the girl alive. However, detectives' attempts to contact him were futile. The call was forwarded to voicemail. To Valentina's loved ones, Paul seemed like a decent person, calm and kind. He did not give the impression of an aggressive individual, and his intention to marry the girl seemed sincere. Relatives could not even believe that the American was involved in this terrible crime. However, doubts were dispelled when investigators visited the building where he rented an apartment. It turned out that the suspect had disappeared in an unknown direction. When news of Valentina's murder became public, John Paul deleted his social media profile. This happened on the morning of Monday, January 23. From then on, the man was considered the main and only suspect. The assumption was confirmed when investigators viewed footage from the building's surveillance cameras. The Colombian police and prosecutor's office studied several hours of video recordings from cameras in places where the young woman and her boyfriend were from Friday evening to Sunday morning, the period when the body was thrown into the dumpster. The recordings and several WhatsApp chats allowed a partial reconstruction of the girl's last hours. Valentina and Paul agreed to meet on January 20. However, the man arrived a day early and settled into the apartment where the couple planned to live. That same evening, he wrote a message to the girl, and a sudden argument ensued between them. The reason was that Valentina could not meet with Paul because she was at a party with a friend and did not expect his arrival. John also asked if there were adult men at the event and if she had communicated with any of them. An annoyed Valentina replied no, that those were just his unfounded suspicions. Moreover, they had agreed to meet on the 20th. So the girl had planned affairs on the eve of her date with John, to tidy herself up, get eyelash extensions, visit a hairdresser. Due to the conflict, Valentina and John did not see each other all day on January 20th. Only in the evening did surveillance cameras capture the moment when they appeared together in the parking lot near the girl's apartment. The clock showed 6 p.m. when Paul was collecting his beloved's things to move to a new home and start a life together. That same day, Valentina said goodbye to her family and friends and went to the destination by car. She called her mother via video link, informing her that she was going home. In the frame, one could see the girl together with John, who had rented a car to transport her things. At 7 p.m., surveillance cameras filmed the lovers entering the apartment together with Valentina's belongings. A few minutes later, the girl sent her mom several videos showing the new home and how she and Paul went to pick up her things. Finally, the cameras recorded the completion of the move and the couple's return to the apartment. It was nearing 1 in the morning, Saturday, January 21st. Around 3 in the morning, the couple called a taxi to go to a club in the southern part of the city, where Valentina was to give a small performance. They arrived there around 4 a.m. The girl almost immediately got to work, and John was by her side the whole time. Around 5 in the morning, the presentation ended, and the lovers, holding hands, headed to the establishment's office. There they met with the owner, his wife, and her friend. At 6 a.m., the couple left the club. This was the last time friends saw Valentina alive. However, a few hours later, Tres Palacios appeared in public again, and everything was fine with her. That day, she called a friend and said that she did not plan to go anywhere that Saturday. The girl let slip that, most likely, she would stay at home with her partner. Perhaps later they would go out for a short dinner or cook something together. In the evening at 9 p.m., Valentina's last communication with her friend took place via video call. The girl's mother, Laura Hidalgo, recalled that her 13-year-old son was the one who last contacted her daughter in this way. Valentina was lying in bed next to John, and they both looked very happy. After that, none of the relatives heard from the couple again. At 10:43 p.m. on January 21st, cameras in the building captured the young woman together with her beloved for the last time. The footage shows Valentina peeking out of the apartment door, while Paul is standing on the landing. The man seems pensive and somewhat confused, pacing nervously back and forth, occasionally rubbing his face. Then he calls the elevator to go downstairs and pick up some delivery. The next day, Sunday, January 22nd, at 9 a.m., the cameras caught John again. This time he came out of the apartment with 2 garbage bags, and Valentina was nowhere to be seen. The man headed to the parking lot, opened a rented car, and put the bags on the back seat. After that, he returned to the apartment and came out a moment later with 2 suitcases, which he loaded into the trunk. Then he went back up to the apartment again. At 10 a.m., Paul carried out a suitcase covered with a gray blanket and put it on a hand cart along with a bag. Under the fabric, Valentina's head was visible. Once outside, the perpetrator looked around anxiously. Making sure no one was nearby, he took a few steps forward and glanced to see if anyone was coming down in the elevator. Then he quickly walked back to the car. After surveying the area one last time and taking a sip of water, John struggled to lift the heavy load and threw it into the trunk. He did the same with the bag. After that, he got behind the wheel and drove away. At noon, the car was recorded by surveillance cameras in various parts of the city. It seems the man was looking for a suitable place to get rid of the suitcase. Around 3 p.m., a gray sedan pulled into one of the parks and stopped near some dumpsters. The driver got out of the car, walked over to a container, and looked around. Making sure no one was watching him, he pulled out the suitcase, which apparently was very heavy, and tossed it into the bin. Then he went back to the car for the bag and threw it into the dumpster as well. Slamming the lid shut, the man quickly walked away. The car headed west, heading towards El Dorado International Airport. At 4:30 p.m., Paul was last seen at the air hub. On Monday, January 23rd, the Ministry of Security announced a $1 million reward for information that would help detain the person or persons involved in the murder of Valentina Tres Palacios. The Colombian authorities asked Interpol to issue a search warrant for John, as he had fled the country without explaining the reason. Moreover, the man was the last to see the girl alive. The next day, on the evening of January 24th, the National Police of Panama reported the arrest of the suspect at Tocumen International Airport as he tried to fly to Turkey. Almost immediately, the Colombian side initiated the procedure for Paul's deportation in order to interrogate him about Valentina's death. More than 14 criminal intelligence experts were involved in the investigation. They analyzed over 300 hours of video footage taken during the search, the result of methodical work under the auspices of the Prosecutor General's office. After the arrest of the suspect, another important lead appeared in the case: the murdered girl's mobile phone, found near El Dorado Airport by a security firm employee. The man was walking past a gas station when he suddenly noticed a phone on the grass and picked it up. There was no SIM card in the device. Not realizing that it was Tres Palacio's phone, the guard took it home, intending to sell it. A few hours later, his agitated wife called him. She recognized in the photo from the phone the same girl whose picture she had just seen on social media and whose body was found in a dumpster. Unfortunately, by that time, the device had already been put up for sale, and the potential buyer had managed to format it. Thus, valuable data that could have helped the investigation was lost. Soon, the taxi driver who drove the couple to the nightclub gave his testimony. That's when one extremely important question arose. The driver said that his services were needed to take the lovers to an entertainment establishment in the southern part of the city. Before getting into the car, John lingered a bit, so Valentina got in first. Once in the passenger compartment, the girl suddenly screamed that she had sent something by mistake. The confused driver looked at her and then checked his phone. It turned out that Tres Palacios had written him a message in Spanish to support service: "Help, I'm in danger." The man asked Valentina if everything was all right, but she did not have time to answer. At that moment, Paul got into the car and inquired about his companion's condition. The girl assured that she was fine. When the car started moving, John and Valentina began speaking in English. The American asked the taxi driver if he knew the language. Upon hearing an affirmative answer, Paul fell silent and began messaging the girl on WhatsApp. Around 4 in the morning, the driver dropped the couple off at the club doors. After that, he did not attach much importance to the incident until a few days later he learned about the murder of the young woman. Valentina's friend from Cartagena came to the Bogotá prosecutor's office to hand over her computer to investigators. The thing is, the deceased DJ had left her WhatsApp account open on it. The correspondence could provide some clues as to what happened. One piece of evidence was the suitcase that her friend saw in Tres Palacio's chat, the same one in which the girl's body was placed and in which she was found. I noticed that on the day of his arrival in Bogotá, Paul sent Valentina a message on WhatsApp with several selfies in which he posed with luggage. The suitcase John came with looked a lot like the one found in the dumpster. Even the color matched, the witness said. No one knows why Valentina left the messenger session open on her friend's computer. But thanks to the correspondence, the police were able to better understand the events of the day the girl was killed. A forensic medical examination established that death occurred as a result of mechanical asphyxia due to severe compression of the neck with a rope. Traces of that the victim suffered before her death were also found on the body. According to experts, everything indicates that Valentina Tres Palacios died in her sleep. Forensic scientists came to this conclusion because the girl was wearing pajamas. The evidence collected undoubtedly exposes John Paul. When the charges were brought, the suspect did not admit guilt in the murder under aggravating circumstances and in concealing evidence. Instead, he claimed that his rights were violated during his arrest in Panama, as he was not allowed to contact a lawyer. The court hearing lasted more than 5 hours. Due to his limited knowledge of Spanish, Paul was provided with an interpreter. John is responsible for the crime, as he was the last person to see Valentina alive. After the incident, he tried to escape by deleting his social media profiles. John Nelson Paul was born on May 19, 1987 in Wisconsin, USA. In his homeland, he was already married and had 3 children. The man had previously been convicted of violence, and his ex-wife had obtained a restraining order against him. Another woman to whom Paul transferred money stated that he actively used adult sites. According to her, John spent 5 to 6 hours a day there. She added that the American was a dreamer, constantly told some strange stories, and could instantly transform from a gentleman into a completely different person. Another girl said that she met Paul on one of these resources. At some point, she stopped communicating with him after a strange remark about and death. John asked her verbatim, "If you were in a bar and I approached, would you talk to me?" The girl objected. To which the American replied, "Isn't that enough reason for one of us to die, perhaps a violent death?" The witness noted that although the subject sent her money on behalf of a magic lord, she never spoke to him via video link. However, his messages were sometimes extremely strange. It is worth noting a certain pattern in John's behavior with victims. In the case of Valentina, he met her on social media and began persistently and regularly sending her money. This is where that false power scenario is born, when a woman feels like an object, property, a tool in the hands of a manipulator. This should have alerted trusting women, but Paul believed from the beginning that he could buy their affection. All these factors fell out of sight. Perhaps the victim inadvertently succumbed to the offender's game, which eventually failed due to his own mistake. The main hypothesis of the investigation is that John considered the Colombian garbage removal system to be similar to the American one he was used to. Paul thought that the waste was simply dumped into containers for further disposal. However, he did not take into account that local scrap collectors and homeless people often rummage through the bins in search of things that can be sold or used. Currently, John Paul is being held in solitary confinement at a prison in Bogotá. Now it remains to prove the suspect's connection to the crime and establish the motives for the horrific murder. In Colombia, the criminal code provides for up to 50 years in prison for the act incriminated to the American. A special group formed by the city police in cooperation with the Prosecutor General's office will search for physical evidence to bring charges. Such cases once again remind us of the danger that social networks can pose when meeting strangers. Valentina believed that she had found the love of her life. But that did not happen. Like many people, she did not think that this could happen to her. Against the backdrop of the setting sun, when ordinary tourists enthusiastically photograph the picturesque landscapes, certain individuals pass along the same beaches, visit the same restaurants and nightclubs without drawing attention, carefully studying the available opportunities. Their gaze is aimed at identifying specific indicators of vulnerability: solo travelers, people with signs of disorientation or unfamiliarity with the area, or those who seek social contacts and authentic local experiences. Numerous travel safety guides emphasize the importance of caution in unfamiliar environments. And although the vast majority of vacationers return home without incident, tourist guides constantly stress the need to maintain constant vigilance about the surroundings and personal safety, regardless of the chosen vacation spot. Welcome back to the continuation of our detailed investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Siddika Shah Kananki. In previous episodes, we thoroughly analyzed two main hypotheses that could clarify the fate of this talented young student on the coast of Punta Cana. The first episode of our investigation focused on the likelihood of a swimming accident, revealing how the deceptively attractive waters of the Dominican Republic conceal dangerous underwater currents and obstacles that annually cause misfortunes for many tourists, often leaving almost no traces. We meticulously studied the meteorological conditions, tidal features, and documented hazards of the aquatic environment that could have existed that fateful March morning. The second part of our series focused on the ambiguous testimony and suspicious behavior of Joshua Ribb, whose version of events raised serious questions among investigators. We analyzed the contradictions in his statements, the atypical schedule of his movements, and the strange gaps in surveillance camera records, which led many to question his non-involvement in the disappearance of Siddika Shah. Today we will consider perhaps the most perplexing of all versions, a hypothesis that correlates with documented security issues throughout the region, but remains unproven in the specific case of Siddika Shah. Is there a likelihood that this promising student from Pittsburgh fell victim to security problems that periodically threaten travelers in tourist destinations? Exploring this assumption, we will analyze not only dry statistical data, but also objective threats in tourist locations, the specific circumstances that could have made Siddhika Shah vulnerable, and consider how similar incidents have unfolded in other picture-perfect resorts that hide unexpected dangers beneath their seemingly flawless exterior. The Dominican Republic appears to visitors as the embodiment of a paradise, endless stretches of golden sand bordering crystal-clear azure waters, lush palm trees swaying in light tropical breezes, and vibrant local culture manifesting everywhere. Promotional tourist videos show satisfied vacationers carelessly enjoying days at all-inclusive resorts and exciting excursions in tropical landscapes. Over 6 million tourists chose this destination annually before the pandemic, making it the most visited destination in the Caribbean basin. However, what these glossy advertising materials usually overlook is the multidimensional reality that exists parallel to this vacation ideal. Outside the carefully maintained resort grounds and beyond the constantly patrolled tourist zones lies another aspect of many vacation destinations, where certain security risks coexist with natural beauty. The contrast can be stark. In popular tourist districts, certain individuals may scout for visitors who appear unfamiliar with their surroundings. According to travel security sources, tourists are advised to constantly maintain awareness of their environment in any destination, as the vacation atmosphere can sometimes create situations where visitors may find themselves less guarded than in their familiar environments. The carefree beach where Siddhika Shah Kananki was last seen creates a striking contrast to the alarming scenarios we are obligated to consider. Video footage captured her heading toward the shoreline that fateful March morning, when she appeared completely calm and carefree in her vacation environment, showing no signs of concern about potential threats that might lie ahead. To accurately analyze the likelihood that general risk factors could have played a role in this case, it is necessary to establish who Siddhika Shah was and the specific circumstances of her trip. Siddhika Shah Kananki was a 20-year-old student at the University of Pittsburgh. Despite her Indian origin, she was an American student, not a foreign student from India, as erroneously claimed in some reports. Her academic records indicated exceptional abilities, with professors characterizing her as an intellectual, diligent, and thoughtful individual. Importantly, Siddhika Shah was staying at a 5-star resort complex in Punta Cana with friends, not traveling alone on a limited budget. She had visited the Dominican Republic during a short break from her studies, staying in the relatively secure conditions of a prestigious residential complex. Despite these safety factors, experts point out that under certain conditions, risks can arise in any situation for any traveler. On the morning of her disappearance, Siddhika Shah briefly separated from her companions, venturing alone to the beach, thus creating a time window when she was by herself, a period that security experts identify as a time of increased vulnerability for travelers. As Dr. Alan Avasses, an expert on tourism security models in the Caribbean, explains, even vacationers in luxurious resorts can encounter unexpected circumstances during moments when they separate from their group. That is precisely why travel safety recommendations often advise maintaining constant communication with companions, even during brief absences. Moreover, although Siddhika Shah did not face financial constraints that could have prompted risky decisions for the sake of saving money, her age and potential interest in authentic cultural experiences outside the resort could still have been factors influencing her decisions regarding interactions with unfamiliar situations or people. These considerations do not prove that any particular scenario took place in the case of Siddhika Shah, but they illustrate how even travelers in apparently safe conditions can be exposed to certain risk factors at specific moments or under certain circumstances. If security issues were involved in the disappearance of Siddhika Shah, then dramatic scenarios with overt signs of distress were unlikely to have taken place. Modern security problems in vacation spots often involve more subtle approaches. Imagine a friendly local approaching a vacationer on the beach, perhaps offering information about the best locations to watch the sunset or recommending authentic local cuisine outside the resort. The conversation seems casual, even coincidental, precisely the kind of cross-cultural exchange that many travelers hope for. This initial contact establishes trust and allows for assessing the person's circumstances, linguistic abilities, and whether they are alone. As travel security experts assert, alarming situations in tourist zones often begin with seemingly random encounters. Travel recommendations usually warn that these interactions can sometimes lure a vacationer into uncomfortable situations. Initial conversations usually seem sincere and positive, without any signs of potential problems. The next phase typically involves moving away from public spaces. A new acquaintance may invite the person to visit a local establishment far from tourist zones, offer transportation to authentic experiences, or invite them to a private meeting. As security reports indicate, some individuals even establish prior contact through social media or dating apps before the visitor's arrival in the country, creating an illusory sense of familiarity upon meeting in person. What makes these situations particularly alarming is their gradual nature. There is rarely a clear moment when alarm bells should go off for the person involved. Instead, a series of seemingly normal decisions gradually leads them further and further away from safety. By the time the situation reveals its true nature, individuals are usually far from public places, separated from their belongings, and may have already been transported far from the initial location. A particularly troubling aspect documented in travel security materials is drinks that can affect consciousness. Some reports mention individuals being offered refreshing drinks that led to disorientation, memory lapses, and decreased awareness. This method could explain how someone like Siddika, who by all indications was sensible and cautious, could disappear from a public beach without signs of distress that would have attracted attention. The geography of island destinations creates challenges for searching for missing persons, especially in cases involving rapid movement. To understand why the search for a person who has found themselves in difficult circumstances becomes extremely complex, we need to explore these unique geographical features. From tourist enclaves like Punta Cana, where Siddika disappeared, well-maintained highways lead to major urban centers such as Santo Domingo and Santiago within a few hours. These cities with populations in the millions offer countless places where individuals could potentially be taken, creating conditions for searching for a needle in a haystack that overwhelm even well-resourced investigations. But the island geography adds even more complexity. The Dominican Republic shares the island of Hispaniola with Haiti, forming a land border that, despite official checkpoints, has sectors with varying levels of monitoring. As border security experts assert, there are unofficial crossings in certain sections. Even more problematic is the maritime dimension. Winding coastlines have numerous small harbors, private docks, and isolated coves from which boats can depart with minimal oversight. A person transported from Punta Cana could potentially be on a ship heading to neighboring islands within a few hours of the initial departure, before search operations even begin. As regional security expert Carlos Mendez explains, the window for searching for individuals in alarming cases is extremely narrow. Within 24 to 48 hours, people can be moved several times, crossing borders, which exponentially complicates investigation and recovery efforts. Travel security resources note that once a person is moved internationally, the search for missing persons becomes exponentially more complex, as the investigation must navigate multiple jurisdictions, languages, and legal systems with varying levels of cooperation and resource commitments. To understand why certain security issues should be considered as a possible explanation in the case of Siddika, we should explore the documented realities of the region. Travel recommendations state that visitors should remain alert to their surroundings and demonstrate appropriate caution in tourist zones throughout the Caribbean region. These resources specifically mention that travelers from various regions, including other parts of the Caribbean, Asia, and Latin America, have sometimes encountered security issues in certain locations. This confirms that foreign citizens, like Siddika, and not just local residents, must maintain vigilance while traveling. It is particularly important to consider that security problems can exist even in popular tourist zones. According to travel safety networks, visitors should maintain vigilance in tourist spots throughout the region, including coastal resort towns. Punta Cana, where Siddika disappeared, is precisely such a place. These situations do not exist in isolation, they function within complex networks involving various individuals. Travel recommendations sometimes express concerns about how effectively certain problems are being addressed, creating additional challenges for investigation and visitor safety. Numerous Caribbean countries have made efforts to address these issues by establishing specialized police units and enhancing visitor protection. However, as security assessments suggest, opportunities for improvement remain, creating an environment where travelers must maintain proper vigilance. Understanding these realities does not mean that any particular scenario necessarily occurred in Sitica's case, but it outlines that several probabilities must be considered within the documented context of regional security considerations. If security issues were indeed involved in Sitica's case, understanding the investigative challenges helps explain why such cases often remain unsolved for long periods, if they are solved at all. When Sitica's disappearance was reported, authorities faced a complex investigative puzzle. The initial focus most likely centered on the beach area where she was last seen, operating under the assumption of a swimming incident, which our first episode explored in detail. Search teams likely combed the shoreline and surrounding waters, looking for any signs of a swimmer in distress. However, if other scenarios were involved, this focus on the immediate area would have prompted searching for evidence in precisely the wrong place. With each passing hour, the geographical scale of where Sitica could be exponentially increased, quickly surpassing the actual search capability of even the best-resourced law enforcement agencies. The evidentiary challenges are equally daunting. Unlike other situations that leave physical evidence, the initial stages of alarming incidents often appear completely normal to witnesses. Someone voluntarily leaving the beach with a new acquaintance, accepting a ride, or entering a local establishment does not raise the same concern as overt distress. In Sitica's case, the resort environment itself posed an additional complication. Five-star resorts typically maintain controlled perimeters with security personnel and surveillance systems. However, these systems have limits, cameras do not cover every corner, security staff cannot track every guest, and beach zones are often vulnerable boundaries between resort property and public spaces. Jurisdictional complexity creates additional friction. Zones involving foreign citizens require coordination among multiple agencies, each with different protocols, priorities, and resources. Language barriers also complicate identifying and questioning witnesses, where crucial details can be lost in translation. Perhaps most significantly, if organized actions were involved, they would likely operate with sophisticated awareness. Such operations can track official activities, adapt routes and methods when investigations intensify in certain areas, and maintain layers of separation between different participants, making comprehensive investigations extremely difficult. Understanding potential risks and destinations is not about spreading fear, but about arming travelers with awareness. If security issues were involved in Sitica's case, what measures could have provided protection for others? Simply being aware of how alarming situations typically begin, through friendly encounters that gradually distance people from public places, creates heightened vigilance about certain types of interactions. Even for travelers who remain in a secure resort environment, understanding the risks associated with temporary separation from their group can inform safer decisions. Established security protocols for travelers include maintaining regular communication with companions, setting check-in times during temporary separation, and providing location information. These simple practices create accountability structures that make isolated individuals less vulnerable. Technology adds additional layers of protection that were not widely available even a decade ago. Location-sharing apps that allow friends or family to track movement patterns, emergency alert systems that function internationally, and regular check-ins with companions, all these create safety nets that can deter potential alarming situations for isolated travelers. Simple awareness is equally important. Security experts advise maintaining healthy skepticism about unusually friendly strangers, especially those offering experiences, opportunities, or assistance that would involve leaving public places. Legitimate guides and service providers have verified credentials and generally operate through established businesses that can be researched in advance. For students like Sitica who travel during academic breaks, university programs increasingly offer specialized travel safety training that includes recognizing risks. These programs emphasize the importance of group travel, using only official transportation services, and thoroughly researching destinations before arrival. As Dr. Vasquez notes, the vast majority of travelers to the Dominican Republic never encounter serious problems. However, Awareness of specific security considerations helps travelers make decisions that significantly reduce their vulnerability to the rare but serious situations that exist. As detailed in our previous episodes, Siddika Kananke remains missing despite extensive search efforts spanning both the Dominican Republic and international resources. The investigation continues to consider several directions simultaneously, including various possibilities alongside the theory of a swimming incident and questions surrounding Joshua Ribb's account. International agencies continue to coordinate with Dominican authorities, with the FBI providing technical assistance and other agencies applying pressure for thorough investigation. Siddika's family and friends maintain a presence in the Dominican Republic, tirelessly working to keep attention focused on the search while navigating the emotional devastation of their ongoing ordeal. Community support has emerged both locally and globally. In the Dominican Republic, volunteer groups have organized additional search efforts, particularly focusing on areas beyond the initial beach location. Online, social media campaigns sustain visibility for Siddika's case, spreading her photo and story to maintain a high level of public awareness. Whether security issues explain Siddika's disappearance remains unknown. However, what is indisputable is that her case has raised critical awareness about factors that could place travelers in vulnerable situations, and about the importance of maintaining security awareness even in seemingly idyllic vacation conditions. The possibility that Siddika Kananke encountered a security incident represents more than just one theory in a mysterious disappearance. It highlights broader patterns of vulnerability that affect travelers globally and underscores the contrast between tourist marketing and on-the-ground realities in various destinations. Although we may never know with certainty what happened to Siddika that March morning in Punta Cana, considering her case through the lens of travel security provides valuable insights that can protect future visitors. Her disappearance serves as a powerful reminder that paradise locations require just as much careful attention to personal safety as any other place. The beach where Siddika walked that morning continues to welcome new visitors every day. They still spread their towels on the same sand, swim in the same waters, and admire the same stunning views, mostly unaware of the mystery that unfolded there. This parallel reality, tourism continues while questions remain unanswered, underscores the importance of awareness without sowing panic. For the millions who will visit the Dominican Republic and similar destinations in the coming years, awareness of specific regional features allows for making informed decisions that balance enjoyment with proper caution. Simple precautions, maintaining vigilance even in a luxurious resort environment, avoiding temporary isolation, and exercising healthy skepticism about overly friendly strangers, can significantly reduce vulnerability without detracting from the travel experience. For the bright young student who vanished during what was supposed to be a carefree vacation with friends, we continue to seek answers. Whether those answers will be found in the complex currents explored in our first episode, the suspicious circumstances surrounding Joshua Ribb from our second investigation, or in the alarming situations we consider today, remains to be seen. What is certain is that Siddika's story deserves to be told, her case deserves to be solved, and the lessons from her disappearance can help protect others who will follow in her footsteps to beaches that remain as enthrallingly beautiful as they are worthy of mindful awareness from every traveler. Alexis Crawford, a 21-year-old senior at Clark University in Atlanta, was preparing for graduation. Her Evera family meant everything to her. Alexis grew up in a large and loving family with 5 brothers and 4 sisters. She also had a very close relationship with her parents. Friends noted her self-confidence and perseverance in achieving goals. Alexis was thoughtful, kind, and cheerful. Spending a lot of time with her father Bobby, who worked as a lawyer, further strengthened her clear understanding of good and evil. Studying criminal justice, Alexis aspired to do something that could help people and bring about positive change. Alexis shared an off-campus apartment with 21-year-old Jordan Johnson. They were inseparable, and Alexis called Jordan her best friend. Jordan knew Alexis' family well and even celebrated Thanksgiving and Easter with them. On October 30th, around 3:30 p.m., Alexis' mom Tammy and her sister Monica contacted her via FaceTime. Alexis seemed to be in a great mood, joking and talking a lot. Then she asked Monica to send her some money through a special app. Around 9 p.m., Alexandria, Alexis' sister, texted her, wondering about her plans. The upcoming weekend was alumni reunion at the college, with many celebrations and parties planned around campus. But it seemed Alexis had no plans, as she simply replied, "Nothing." Alexis made an Instagram post at 9:03 and responded to a message in a group chat about 20 minutes after that. And that was the last anyone heard from her. When morning came, Alexis was still silent. She communicated with someone in her family every day, but now her phone went straight to voicemail. On November 1st, Alexis missed classes and then failed to show up for work. This was absolutely out of character for her, and her family grew very concerned. Alexis never missed anything without a good reason. Something was clearly wrong, so they reported her missing. Surveillance cameras recorded Alexis leaving the Heritage Station apartments, and her roommate Jordan reported dropping her off at a liquor store near their home around 11:30 p.m. About an hour later, before bed, Jordan still saw Alexis. She told police that when she woke up on the morning of October 31st, Alexis was gone. No signs that she stayed home that night. Examining the apartment, Jordan noticed Alexis' phone, ID, and debit card were also missing. When Jordan was about to leave for class, she found the door locked. Perhaps Alexis went to a party or to meet other friends late in the evening. But the only camera that captured her was at the liquor store, and none of her friends said they saw her that night. The hashtag Let's Find Lexi became popular on social media, and volunteers focused their search on the wooded area across from her apartment. Alexis had never been reported missing before. There was no activity on her phone or bank accounts. Considering everything they knew about her responsibility, especially towards family, hope quickly turned to fear of the worst. Police ruled out no possibilities. There was still a chance Alexis ran away for unknown reasons. Law enforcement called local hospitals and doctors to find out if anyone had registered under the name Jane Doe. Unexpectedly, they received information that brought their search for Alexis back to where she was last seen, her apartment. When she disappeared, the pastor and family representative, Reverend Mark L. Hutchins, said he knew about her difficult trials. Recently, Alexis had experienced something no woman should have to endure, so he urged the people of Atlanta to pray for her and her family. At the time, it wasn't specified what exactly was meant, but it later became known that on October 27th, 3 days before disappearing, Alexis had gone to the hospital and filed a police report, claiming she had been by Jordan's boyfriend, 21-year-old Baron Brentley. On October 27th, the three of them were drinking at the girl's apartment, and Baron made attempts to hit on Alexis and harass her, but she rejected his advances. He claimed he mistook her for Jordan. Very upset, Alexis went to her bedroom. Baron followed her, after which she locked herself in the bathroom. According to her, she remembered nothing further and passed out. Upon regaining consciousness, Alexis found her underwear torn and Baron partially undressed. Jordan even knocked on the door, and when Baron opened it, she described him as undressed. The first thing he said to her was, "I did Alexis." By 6 in the morning, Baron had already left in Jordan's car, just before the police arrived at the apartment. Jordan did call 911, but not to report an assault, rather that he had taken her vehicle. The alleged was not mentioned, and she referred to Baron as an ex-boyfriend, which contradicted other accounts of their relationship at the time. Then Alexis went to Grady Hospital for a exam, which found traces of Baron's semen inside her. While Alexis was going through all this, Jordan, aware of the situation, secretly brought Baron back to her room, where he stayed for the next few days. Alexis told friends she no longer wanted to sleep in her room, so she moved to the living room. She was frightened and felt unsafe. This situation was still being considered in the police report, and since Alexis was living in the living room and staying away from the apartment, she had no idea that Baron was still there. Police officers immediately went to the apartment to talk to the couple. Jordan confirmed that she had reported it, as a result of which she and Alexis stopped communicating. The more they talked, the deeper the police understood there was much more behind this story, and the further they dug, the worse it looked. Eventually, with the help of her father, who worked in law enforcement in another state, Jordan led the detective to an area 11 miles from the apartment. On November 8, a week after Alexis was declared missing, her body was found in DeKalb County Park, about 11 miles from her home. She had been strangled and stuffed into a trash can. Shortly after, police announced charges of malice murder against two individuals, Jordan Johnson and Barron Brentley. Student government President Levon Campbell noted the huge impact of this event on the university community. First, because of the loss of Alexis, and secondly, because it was done by two other well-known and popular students. Many tried to make sense of what happened and simply find answers. The university president published an open letter, expressing condolences to the school and announcing that the campus would provide grief counseling to help all those affected cope. Alexis' father said that if they wanted to take someone's life, they could have done it to him, not necessarily kill his daughter. Surprisingly, Barron and Jordan began to open up and confess to what happened to Alexis. According to them, around 3 a.m. on October 31st, an argument broke out between the friends, which quickly escalated into a physical confrontation. Hearing the commotion, Barron came out of Jordan's room and also became a participant in the conflict. Events unfolded so quickly that Barron admitted to choking Alexis. While Jordan grabbed a plastic bag and pulled it over the victim's head, the two of them continued to strangle the girl together. Barron told investigators that Alexis was desperately gasping for air and making sounds filled with suffering. Surveillance cameras in the garage near the apartment captured the couple arriving at the building in Jordan's car around 3 a.m. Law enforcement suspects that this was the moment Alexis' body was loaded into the vehicle. The killers put her in a plastic container, carried her out of the apartment, wiped up the blood in the living room, then took her body to the park and dumped it in the woods. After that, both of them returned to the apartment to sleep. Later that same day, Jordan sent a message to another friend asking her to replace the trash can. Then she and Barron got ready and went to a Halloween party. Detectives concluded that both Jordan and Barron were equal and willing accomplices in this crime. Jordan turned off Alexis' phone but continued to send messages from it, pretending everything was fine. She posted on Instagram about her friend going missing, asking for help in the search. They acted as if nothing had happened. Police treated the crime scene with luminol and found traces of blood in at least 6 different spots in the living room, despite the cleanup. However, it remains unknown whose blood it was and how it got there. The exact motive for the murder has not been established, and details of the quarrel are unknown. Given the fact that Alexis filed her complaint on October 27, 3 days before disappearing, this could explain the reason the conflict started. However, police say they still need to find out whether this complaint was a direct motive for the murder or if the crime occurred against the backdrop of a sudden argument that flared up. On November 16, a farewell ceremony for Alexis was held, broadcast online. A huge number of people attended the funeral. Soon, Jordan Johnson and Barron Brentley were charged. Both plead not guilty to 6 counts, which include malice murder, false imprisonment, and concealing the death of another. Barron is also accused of violating probation and obstructing an emergency call. No charges of harassment were filed. The district attorney's office announced it would not seek the death penalty for either defendant. Barron was undoubtedly well known to law enforcement and had been detained many times before, including for burglary, assault, attempted escape and insulting a police officer, domestic violence, and third-degree cruelty to children. In 2 years, he was sent to prison 5 times. The young woman accused of killing her friend and roommate will not be released on bail. During an online hearing, Crawford's mother and father begged the judge not to allow bail. Raven Johnson was denied bail, but her lawyers asked the judge to reconsider the arguments, claiming she assisted in the investigation and had no criminal history other than minor offenses. Prosecutors claimed they found direct messages from Johnson on social media urging Brentley to destroy surveillance camera footage from the apartment complex where she and Crawford lived. They alleged that at the time of Crawford's murder, Johnson was on probation for driving under the influence. Alexis' parents also addressed the court during Johnson's bail hearing. Both were denied release on bail as the judge stated Jordan posed a significant flight risk. It was revealed that just hours after Alexis' death, she dropped out of college and planned to return home to her parents in Michigan. She also tried to contact witnesses in the case. Johnson attempted to conceal evidence when she contacted Alexis' family and reported that no DNA was found during the examination, although this was untrue. Barron and Jordan are now pointing fingers at each other and distancing themselves from what happened. Their lawyers petitioned to separate the cases in order to conduct separate trials for the murder. In addition to the negative consequences caused by the quarantine, another serious blow to the family and the prosecution was the 2023 decision that Barron's confession could not be used as evidence. The ruling stated that since he was likely under the influence of prohibited substances at the time, this put investigators in a difficult position. The court announced it was considering releasing Barron on bail. Alexis' loved ones and friends found themselves in a desperate situation. At 21, Alexis was just beginning her life journey, and the fact that she was deprived of life in such a cruel and merciless way only adds grief to the circumstances of this stunning case. Her sister Alexandria said that Alexis had always been a source of inspiration for her with her strength of spirit and determination. Eva Carson, a college student, mysteriously disappeared from her residence overnight, leaving no clues behind. Law enforcement immediately launched a search for the girl, but a rather grim picture soon emerged. By gathering the scant evidence, investigators were able to reconstruct the events of that night and piece together the true story that shocked the entire nation. Eva was born on November 19, 1985, in the city of Athens in the U.S. state of Georgia. From a young age, she stood out for her incredible determination. Eva presided over her school's student government and was involved in volunteer work at a nursing home and a shelter for teens suffering from violence. Moreover, in high school, she interned at the U.S. House of Representatives and worked part-time in a stem cell research lab. After graduating with honors, the ambitious young woman enrolled at the University of North Carolina, where she decided to study political science and biology. She received a prestigious scholarship for her brilliant accomplishments. Eva was actively involved in university life, holding leadership positions in many student organizations. In addition, she continued her volunteer work and worked part-time as a science teacher at an elementary school. On top of that, Eva managed to visit several countries on charitable missions. She spent a summer in Ecuador working as a physician's assistant, studied for a semester in Cuba, and visited Egypt as part of a research team. Thus, Eva was considered one of the most outstanding students at her university and had grandiose plans for the future. Even before completing her studies, she received a job offer from a prestigious company, where she intended to work after receiving her diploma. In March 2008, 22-year-old Eva was already in her fourth year of college. At that time, she was renting a house near campus with friends. On the 5th of March, around 1:30 a.m., Eva's neighbors went to a party and invited her to come along. However, the girl declined, as she had to prepare for classes. Eventually, her friends left without her, returning home around 4:30 a.m. Approaching the house, the young people noticed that the front door was wide open, and the light was on inside. However, Eva was not there, nor was her car. It all seemed extremely strange, as no one understood where the girl could have gone in the middle of the night and even left the door unlocked. Her friends tried to call Eva, but she didn't answer. Despite this, they assumed that the girl might have had some urgent business, so they decided to wait for her to return. However, the next day Eva still did not show up, so one of her friends went to the local police station to report the girl's disappearance. As soon as the friend laid out all the circumstances to the investigators, they told her that they had found the body of a young girl that morning whose identity had not yet been established. The cops showed the witness a photo of the deceased, and she immediately recognized Eva. It turned out that around 5 in the morning, a woman who lived 2 kilometers from Eva's house called the police. She woke up to the sound of gunshots, followed by a bone-chilling scream. The frightened woman immediately reported the incident to law enforcement. Arriving at the scene, police found the girl's lifeless body on the ground. She did not have any documents on her, so it was impossible to establish her identity. The only thing the experts were able to find out was that the victim died from several gunshot wounds. After Eva's friend identified the body, detectives interviewed the deceased's neighbors and were able to reconstruct an approximate timeline of events. At midnight, the girl was at home preparing for classes, and by 5 in the morning, she was shot dead 2 kilometers from her residence. Now investigators had to find out how she ended up on that street and who could have committed this horrific crime. Given that the girl's car had also disappeared, investigators surmised that robbery could have been the motive for the crime. This version was also supported by the fact that during a search of Eva's room, the police were unable to find her wallet and bank cards, which were also not near the body. In addition, the medical examiner found no signs, ruling out one of the most common motives. After requesting information about the last location of the victim's phone, investigators learned that it last functioned near a country highway. However, the device could not be found. Apparently, the criminal threw it somewhere in the wooded area. However, detectives soon received their first significant lead. They were informed about an abandoned car that matched the description of Eva's vehicle. It was parked just a few kilometers from the girl's house. Investigators handed the vehicle over to forensic experts to search for fingerprints and DNA traces. At the same time, they found out something else. Experts examined the victim's computer, which she used to prepare for classes, and determined that Eva had used it until 3:30 a.m. Thus, the girl had been at home for at least 2 hours after her friends went to the party, and then for some unknown reason, she ended up several kilometers from home. At that point, the news of Eva's murder had spread throughout the city, and students at her college were shocked by the tragedy. Many knew the girl through her active participation in student life, and no one could believe that she was no longer among the living. Moreover, people began to worry about their own safety, and the fact that the police had no evidence only intensified this fear. Investigators received hundreds of calls with possible leads, students reported any suspicious observations, but none of this brought detectives any closer to unraveling the chilling mystery. However, they soon received extremely important information. Assuming that the killer could have taken possession of the victim's bank cards, investigators requested data on the movement of funds in her accounts. It turned out that just 18 minutes after Eva last used the computer, someone withdrew $700 from one of her cards in 2 transactions. After that, there were several more attempts to withdraw money, but they were unsuccessful due to exceeding the daily limit. The ATM where these transactions took place was located near a shopping center on the opposite side of town. Detectives immediately requested footage from the surveillance cameras at that ATM. The obtained footage showed that Eva's card was used by some man. He was sitting in the girl's car, and there seemed to be someone else in the back seat. Investigators speculated that it could have been Eva herself, but the image quality did not allow them to say for sure. Experts tried to process the video to get more details, but it did not yield any results. While the police were trying to identify the man at the wheel, they learned that the perpetrator had made several more attempts to withdraw money from Eva's card at various ATMs around the city. Unfortunately, none of them had surveillance cameras. This continued until March 7, when investigators received another report of an attempt to withdraw cash. This time, the criminal appeared at a 24-hour store at 12:30 a.m. and used the ATM there. However, Eva's bank declined the request to dispense funds. The police immediately went to that store, which was located in a neighboring town. Fortunately, there were functioning surveillance cameras there. After reviewing the footage from that night, investigators saw the person who tried to withdraw money from Eva's card. But, to their surprise, it was a completely different man than the one who was captured by the camera at the first ATM. The police were faced with the question of whether Eva's murder could have been committed by several criminals, or whether the killer had given her card to someone else. Investigators made efforts to identify the second suspect, but as with the first one, a single blurry photo did not provide enough information. Seeking help, detectives turned to the public, disseminating the footage of the suspect through the media. Given the public's widespread awareness of the case details, police were inundated with calls, but none of them brought them closer to apprehending the perpetrators. The situation changed on March 19 when the police received an anonymous call. An unknown person reported that he recognized the man from the second surveillance camera and identified him as Demario Atwater. While studying information about DeMario, detectives discovered his extensive criminal history. Despite his young age of 21, he had multiple convictions for robbery, assault, trafficking in prohibited substances, and other crimes. Although DeMario served prison terms, he was mostly released early. The police also learned that just 2 days after Eva's murder, DeMario was due to appear in court for carrying a gun while on probation. After comparing photos from old cases with the footage from the store, investigators were convinced that it was the same person. It also turned out that the man lived near the crime scene. During a visit to his home, DeMario denied any involvement in the crime, but the surveillance camera footage was enough for his arrest. Investigators found that he was friends with 17-year-old Lawrence Lovett, who, despite his young age, also had several convictions. After looking at Lawrence's photo, detectives immediately realized that he was the one driving Eva's car in the first recording. Unlike DeMario, the young man resisted arrest by barricading himself in the house. The police had to call in a SWAT team. After being detained, Lawrence, like his accomplice, did not admit his guilt. Both suspects were jailed pending trial. Since DeMario and Lawrence continued to deny their involvement, detectives set about gathering additional evidence. Data on their phone activity showed that on the night of Eva's murder, the devices connected to a cell tower near her house, although both suspects lived in another part of the city. Detectives speculated that Eva became an accidental victim of DeMario and Lawrence, who were looking for someone to rob and saw that the girl was home alone in the middle of the night. Then, judging by the attempts to withdraw money from the card, the criminals took her to several ATMs, where she gave them her PIN code. Unable to withdraw more than $700 due to the daily limit, they took Eva to a wooded area on the outskirts and killed her. Given the severity of the crime, the prosecution intended to seek the death penalty for DeMario. As for the underage Lawrence, he faced a maximum of life imprisonment. However, prosecutors understood that the collected evidence might not be enough to convict. Therefore, they decided to offer DeMario a deal, a guilty plea in exchange for waiving the death penalty. The man agreed. DeMario confirmed that on that night, he and Lawrence planned a robbery for easy money. According to him, Lawrence called him with a proposal to go to the college town in search of a victim. As they drove past Eva's house, they saw her through the window and broke in with weapons. Threatening with guns, the criminals forced Eva to get into her own car and went to withdraw money from ATMs. The whole time, the girl begged to be let go, promising not to go to the police. But the criminals had other plans. DeMario confessed that while still in the car, they decided to kill Eva, because she had seen their faces, even though they did not even try to hide them. In the end, after taking her to a deserted street, the criminals shot the girl with 2 guns. According to DeMario, before she died, Eva asked them to pray with her, but instead, they killed her in cold blood. In April 2010, 2 years after the crime, the court found DeMario guilty of murder. Thanks to the plea deal, the judge sentenced him to life in prison plus 30 years. After the verdict was announced, the man turned to Eva's parents, asking for forgiveness for what he had done and stating that he deserved any punishment. Lawrence refused to plead guilty and stood trial in December 2011. Despite the defense attorney's attempts to convince the jury of his client's innocence, his accomplice's confession combined with the evidence provided sufficient grounds for a guilty verdict. Lawrence received a life sentence. However, his story did not end there. In 2013, the State Court of Appeals overturned the sentence, citing precedent that life imprisonment for juvenile offenders is too harsh and unjustified a punishment. Lawrence was granted a new trial, during which he was more talkative than before. The young man stated that all people make mistakes and that he was not the monster they considered him to be. However, he did not express remorse for what he had done. In the end, the judge again sentenced him to life in prison. It is worth noting that Lawrence was suspected of another similar crime. In January 2008, a few months before Eva's murder, an unknown person broke into the apartment of a 29-year-old student and shot him dead. After that, money was withdrawn from the victim's card at several ATMs in the city. However, detectives lacked evidence against Lawrence, so the charges against him were dropped. Eva's case not only gained wide publicity in the country but also led to changes in state law. In the summer of 2008, the authorities passed a new law that significantly increased the responsibility for crimes committed as part of organized groups. The college where Eva studied established a scholarship in her name and opened a memorial park on the campus grounds. In 2009, Eva's friend made it to the finals of the popular music show, American Idol. Performing on stage, he said that her death inspired him to apply to participate. Without Eva, he would have never achieved such success. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.